as we're, I was thinking to myself while we're doing this, like, wow, like, it's kind of awesome. There's a lot of prayer, right? There was prayer during worship, and then we had two different sets of prayer. I don't think that's a bad thing, because what Jesus said when he was turning the tables, this is a house of prayer. One of my favorite quotes is, whoever controls the altar controls the outcome. And I think there's some things that we neglect when it comes to prayer that could change the outcome of our lives. So that's just my little exhortation on saying towards prayer. Well, how are you all doing? You doing good? So glad to see your beautiful faces on a beautiful Mother's Day. I am not Pastor Chad. He's going through some personal stuff right now. His family is, so they're all physically okay. But just keep them in prayer right now. So I'm going to fill in for him. So we're not going to continue the Becoming series. I'm just going to speak on something that I felt like the Lord had for us in this time. Is that okay? As you can see on the screen, the title of this sermon is Tested. Now, I know when it comes to the word test, that can mean a lot of different things for a lot of the people. There's the dreaded test that you had at school, right, where the teachers had you all sit down, be quiet, and you had to regurgitate all of the facts and statistics and stories and numbers or whatever the case may be. You had to regurgitate all this information onto the page, and that was a test, right? Then there's medical tests, where they analyze the things inside of your body to make a diagnosis as to why you're not feeling good or why you're hurting, and that is a medical test. Then there's a feeling like someone is trying to test you, like they're testing your patience, like when you're texting someone, right, and you put out a long, good, heartfelt message, and they just respond, K, like the letter K. You're testing my patience. Or when you're ordering through the drive-thru at McDonald's McDonald's, I didn't mean to blast you, but any kind of drive-thru, and you're about to give your order, and you have your family in the car, and you say, I would like a McChicken, and they say, is that all? And they interrupt you to say, is that all? And you said, no, if you would just listen, you would know it's not all. And then, I would like a fry, is that all? No. Wait till I'm done talking. I will tell you when it is all. That's testing my patience. Or there was this one time where my daughter really tested my wife's patience. You see, it was Friday. It was a Friday morning. And usually that's my day off, and my wife is a great wife. She's wonderful, and she tries to protect that for me. And so I was vegging on the couch. I was not doing anything. I was just watching TV, totally being chill. My son is at school, but my daughter is there. She's about 3 years old. She's not in school yet. And my wife has an appointment. She wants to get to the gym. There's a special class she wants to get to. So she's cleaning up, she's vacuuming, she's on the phone, she's doing everything, and I'm doing nothing. Because bless her for just giving me that little bit of a rest. And mind you, in our household, I do all of the cooking. Okay, I like to cook. It doesn't bother me, and that's what I do. I cook for my family. So it was kind of weird that as my wife is on her phone, as she's vacuuming, as she's busy, as she's on a time crunch, that my daughter goes up to her and she goes, Mommy, can you make me something to eat? To which my wife says, don't you think that's a question that's better asked to your father? So then my daughter comes up to me, little 3-year-old Eva, and she goes, Daddy, can Mom make me something to eat? And I said, yes, she can. Thank you for asking. This needs to be a thing. She tested the patience that day. And thank God she had a wonderful mother, because she would have been knocked to the next week if she didn't. But there are all kinds of tests that we go through, and that's why I felt led to talk about today. If you've been a Christian for any amount of time and you've been around the prophetic, you start to realize something about God. You see, he does this thing which seems like a blessing at the time, and then it kind of grows into an irritation sometimes, where he gives you direction, or he gives you a promise, or he gives you some kind of indication of a provision coming up, and it's definitely not going to happen now, but God gives you this thing, and whether it's through a dream or a vision, or someone says, hey, I have a word for you, they give you a glimpse of what's to come. And if that's happened to you, you know what that kind of feels like, because at first you're like, cool, that's really awesome. Because there's no way that came from me. There's no way that just happened like that. And now you have this excitement, and because it feels like you're about to merge onto this on-ramp of what's to come. But then you notice soon after, you get hit with this reality check. I'll say it like this. When you receive a notice from God about what's to come, it looks like mountain peaks. I'm from Colorado, so I like mountains. I like to use mountain analogies all the time. But when you receive a word from God, especially when it comes to your life and the things to come, it's like mountain peaks. He delivered you from where you are, and so you've seen where you've come from, and he's going to show you where you're going. How many of you believe that you are better today than you were yesterday or the day before? It wasn't easy, but in a sense, you've reached a peak compared to where you were. And now he's showing you this new destination, and he's showing you the mountain peak of the next mountain. And it's really cool because you can see that other mountain, and it looks really pretty. It's a little bit taller. It's a little bit more beautiful. I like those trees in that other mountain. But then you start to realize, as you take a closer look between your peak and that peak, that there's a greater distance between them. You ever see mountain peaks together? They look really close to each other. But if you ever stand on top of a mountain, you can see the vast distance between them. And then you start to notice the terrain in between the mountains, and the obstacles, and the sheer just incline and decline. And as you're observing this journey to get to this next mountain peak, it's hard to say how long it will be before you reach it. Let me just tell you this. How you navigate that journey will determine your outcome. I'm pretty sure that's not something you all want to hear right now, but it's okay. How you navigate this journey will determine the outcome. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes we're going to put so much stock in the word that God has given us that we neglect the process that it takes to get there. Sometimes we're so bent on that promise that we decide to just change the course just so we can try to achieve that word on our own power, on our own timing, instead of trusting in God. And sometimes, because the promise doesn't come as easily or as quickly as we imagined, we just abandon ship altogether. Do you know what a false peak is? You see, imagine you're at the base of this mountain, and you look up, and you see the peak, and you see all the difficulty that it's going to take, right? Like, you don't just start climbing, you assess the situation. You're like, do I start on this really tough terrain, or do I use the easy path, or do I just do the middle ground? But you assess the situation, you look up, and you see the peak, and you begin to climb it. And it's difficult, and you're having a hard time breathing, and you're trying to reserve your energy so that you can reach this peak. Because when you know where the distance is, you can kind of gain a threshold to get there. Make sense? And when you finally arrive at this peak, and this happens a lot in mountain climbing, you start to realize something, that you have not actually arrived at the peak, but the mountain continues to go up. You see, you were so close to the mountain, you were so close to the vision, that you could not actually see the literal peak. You couldn't see the path or the distance, and so you climb and you climb and you climb and you get there, and then you realized there's way more mountain left. If you haven't done that physically, it sucks. I mean, it's bad. It's terrible. And now you have a choice. You have to either continue or go back down the mountain. And this moment can be a test. Not the school type of tests or the medical or even the time that you feel like your patience is being tested. But how many of you know that God will test you as well? And what I'm not saying is that God will tempt you, because those are different things. Testing and tempting are not the same. In fact, it says in James 1, 13 through 14, let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Temptations and tests are not the same thing. Temptations are, according to James, the things that are lured and enticing you by your own desire. We want to put some blame on Satan, and it's not always just him. God doesn't put you on a path to tempt you to walk away from the thing he's calling you to do. That doesn't make sense. That's not how God tests you. But there are times when God will allow you or actually put you through a test to see how you will handle the situation. Let's look at Genesis 22, verses 1 through 2. And before I read some of this scripture, I want to paint a picture of how we got here. You see, God had gave Abraham a promise. Yeah. And the promise was, you will have a son. Yeah. And we hit an issue where Abraham did something very human that we have all done. You've all agreed that you've done this before, where he started to get impatient. The promise wasn't coming quick enough. And so through conversation with his wife, they had an illegitimate son outside of God's will named Ishmael. And let me tell you something. This isn't my notes, but I feel like this is important. Your disobedience has a lot more collateral damage than you think. Because it is out of the seed of Ishmael that Islam and Muslim came. And it's out of that seed of Isaac that Judaism and Christianity comes out of. And ever since those two seeds were created, they have been warring with each other and warring with each other. The things that you see in Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan and Israel and all these things, this is not a new thing. This has gone on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, all because Abraham tried to take control of the promise on his own terms instead of letting God handle it. You may be thinking, I'm just trying to prolong the process a little bit or make it happen. It's not a big deal. And let me tell you, scripturally, your disobedience can cause a lot more collateral damage than you expect. Because the damage is not just on you, it can be on other people as well. That's why there's generational curses. But God did still, because God's promises are yes and amen. Gave Isaac to Abraham. But then we get to this point. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And Abraham said, here I am. God said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of those mountains, the one that I shall tell you. And this is where a lot of people get hung up in the story. Why? Because Abraham had been patiently waiting his entire life to get a son. Sarah was barren, and they gave up the idea of having children, and they were old, and God tells them that he's going to have a son unprovoked. It wasn't like he was now still fasting over the issue. He had given up on the idea, and the angel shows up and tells him. And the journey certainly wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. They definitely messed up in that middle part with the whole Ishmael situation. But Abraham finally gets his son. And you can see in the different situations, based off the story, that Abraham kind of hit a false peak, it looks like. Some tests, it seemed that Abraham had passed before he got to this point, right? He moved out of his country. He obeyed the Lord. He passed the test. He seemed to pass this test with his nephew Lot, where he was being a peacekeeper and let Lot have whatever Lot chose. He seemed to like he was finally being rewarded for being faithful. Abraham was, I messed up a little bit, but Lord, I've been obeying you. I left my country. I left my other members of family. I left my economy. I became some kind of nomad. I obeyed you. I did all these things, and now you promised me, and now I have it. And then God tests him. And it's like his journey of obedience and faithfulness has not yet been completed. And that's why a lot of people get frustrated. Maybe I have a little bit of compassion for Abraham, empathy, but more so, it feels like they've been hit with that false peak. Maybe you're here in this room and you've been on a journey for a long time. That there's been something in your heart. There's been something that you've been praying over and asking the Lord for and doing your very best and trying to behave and trying not to cuss out the person who cuts you off in traffic. And you're doing all the things that you think you should be and you're trying to be good, but the thing still is not coming. I don't know what the false peak is compared to the real one in your journey. Maybe it's the finances. Maybe it's your spiritual walk. Maybe you're finally overcome with the unhealthy habit instead of the healthy habit. Maybe your prayer life is lacking. Maybe your worship in your secret life, in your secret place is lacking. Maybe there's a false peak in your relationships that you wanted God to help break some generational curses, but you're still struggling to try to communicate to these people. I don't know what the false peak is in your life or what the real peak is, but the test that God puts you through will determine these things. It will verify your faithfulness first off. When you hit a false peak, this is opportunity to show your faithfulness. Will you go up or will you go back down? When you hit a false peak, it will measure your obedience, because it doesn't matter how high that next peak is up. He told me to go. It doesn't matter if my friends told me this was a stupid path, that I don't have the right equipment, that I don't have the right types of rope, that I need a certain team to help me get there, if the rocks are too wet. It doesn't matter. He told me to go up. It doesn't matter if my company says that I shouldn't spread the gospel, but the Lord is putting it on my heart that I need to share with that coworker, or I need to tell them about Jesus. It doesn't matter that my finances look a little weird, but he told me to give to this thing. That false peak will measure your obedience. It will also show your character. That is the thing that separated Saul from David. Their character. That is the thing that the Lord looks like in your life. Your heart posture. And that's a lot easier said than done. Because he looks at how you handle your character despite how other people handle theirs. And you could be treated unfairly and taken advantage of and lied to and manipulated and beaten down. But he's still judging your character. It doesn't matter what they're doing. They're not even on the peak, but you're on a false peak right now. What is your character in this moment? Are you going to grumble all the way up the mountain? You might have to go around it 40 times like the Israelites. Or are you going to say, I trust you? Sometimes the short, simple prayer is the prayer you need most. How many of you saw the movie Hacksaw Ridge? It's about the soldier who wouldn't carry a gun, and he kept on asking, Lord, let me just save one more person. Let me save one more person. Let me save one more person. Let me do one more person, Lord. And I think sometimes we have to be okay with simple, repetitive prayers. Lord, help me take one more step. Lord, help me be nice one more time. Lord, help me shut my mouth one more time. Lord, help me do this one more time. Because if I just have your presence, if I just have your grace, I can do this one more time. Help me keep going, keep going. It's in my weakness that you are strong, Lord. Help my character one more time. But also, when you hit a false peak, the test that God puts you through, is he's wondering if you worship the promise instead of the promise keeper. That at that peak, that wasn't even really the peak. was so important in your life that once you realize that you can't have it, that you're willing just to walk away from God. You've heard stories before of like men and women who were financially well off, but they kept that a secret and because they were single and they didn't want someone to judge them because of their money. And so they lived very basic so that when they married someone, it was for their heart and for them as a person. We're like, yeah, that totally makes sense. I understand that, but we don't want to put that on God. He really cares about you, and he wants you to love him for him, not for his promises. Will you love me if you never speak in tongues again? Will you love me if you never receive a prophetic word from me again? Will you love me if I decide that you can still be effective in ministry and never rise up the tax bracket? Will you still love me if I decide that your healing is not contingent upon your obedience? Will you still love me and trust me if the answer is just simply no, because I know what's best for you? And I don't want that thing to harm you. And you can't see it because it will bring a path of destruction. So will you love me even though I'm protecting you from you? Do you worship the promise more than the promise keeper? But why does God send us these tests to verify these things? It's because he wants to trust you with more. It's not out of malicious intent. It's not out of God that he has like these insecurities, because he doesn't. It's because God is a good steward of what he created. And he wants us to be good stewards of what he's trusting us with. You see, he knows where you've come from. And he sees your heart and your effort so far. But what he has for you is greater than what you're experiencing now. And the greater things to come is meant for someone who knows how to handle the tests. The next mountain peak requires something more sturdy. You see, when you get up to a mountain peak, I remember one time being in Colorado, it's just really quick to go up to Pikes Peak in Colorado Springs. I live like 20 minutes from there. So we would frequent going up to Pikes Peak, and there's a shack up there, a little store. And so you would go up there. I remember one time we drove all the way up there. And I don't know what it is about Colorado, but we don't like to put railings on our mountain roads. So if you're terrible at driving, it's like natural selection almost. So you endure this long drive looking down the side of the hill saying, if someone crashes into me or is stupid or if I swerve, you know, like, and then you finally get up there, and when you get up to the mountain peak, you realize something, that the wind is actually a lot tougher up there. And the air is thinner up there. And I remember one time when we got up there, it started to storm. And if you thought thunder and lightning was loud down here, wait till you're up on a mountain peak. That is crazy. I've never been scared of a storm before in my life, but in that one instance in the mountain peak where the lightning's like by your face. What are you doing? That next peak he's delivering you to also comes with different types of attacks. Not from him, but from the enemy. Because he said, he proves himself, huh? I mean, imagine Job, right? Doing everything that the Lord has called him to do, being promoted, and the devil said, is he really all about it? Let's see. Right. Yeah. When you get up to the next mountain peak, you have to be more sturdy. If you can just trust the process of climbing the mountain, if you could just not get discouraged by the false peaks, then by the time you reach the peak, you are battle tested and ready for it. Can I get a little bit more practical on how we succeed in these tests? How do we get from Abraham trying to make his own promise under his own fruition to the point where Abraham is taking his only son and saying, the Lord will provide. The Lord will provide. Next step I take, it's one step closer to killing him, but the Lord will provide. I think there's something in someone's life in here that the Lord is asking you to kill. But you won't, because you don't think the Lord will provide a replacement. You don't think he has better. You don't 100% trust it. I don't know who that's for, but I really feel that's deep inside me right now. How do we get from forcing our promise to the Lord will provide? I say we do what Jesus did. Some of you are saying, but Jesus was the Son of Man. He was perfect. I'm not the Son of God. I'm definitely not perfect. I mean, did you see my car ride on the way to church this morning? I'm not perfect. Did you hear how my kids were going crazy and I tested my patience? I'm not perfect. You should have seen how I lived this past week. I'm not perfect. I think the first thing you have to acknowledge is this. You have to destroy this lie. You have to acknowledge that, yes, you're not perfect, but lack of perfection does not mean you're lacking in ability. It doesn't mean that you're lacking in access to something. 2 Peter 1:3 says this, by God's divine power, God has given us everything. Someone say everything. Everything we need for a godly life. Oh, we have to read that again. By his divine power, God has given us everything we need for a God. Read that first sentence with me again. By his divine power, God has given us everything we need for a godly life. Is this scripture true? Yes. Is it without error? Yes. Is it God breathed from him directly? Some of you need to take a hold of that sentence right there. We have received all of this by coming to know him, the one who called us to himself by means of his marvelous glory and excellence. You're not perfect, but you're not lacking. But what did Jesus do? Let's look at his life. First, Jesus prayed constantly. I forgot that was up there when I talked about praying in the house of prayer earlier ago. Yep. But Jesus prayed constantly. If someone who was perfect, like Jesus, was that reliant on prayer, why are we so arrogant to think we don't need prayer that much? I'm not trying to come at you, but that's just... The next thing Jesus did was he hid the word in his heart. Some of us are so bent on just trying to experience the prayer and the prophetic, but we want to neglect the word. And yet you have someone who was the word, and he was still in the word. What are we doing? He trusted the Father, and he obeyed the Father. Remember, when Adam and Eve failed the test in the garden by not accepting God's will, Jesus succeeded in the garden when he said, not my will, but yours be done. When Adam disobeyed in paradise, Jesus obeyed in the wilderness. When the Israelites turned to false idols in the desert, Jesus rejected Satan in the desert. When sin, temptation, and failure was brought to the life by the fruit of the tree, Jesus conquered it all and making a way for us to succeed by the death on a tree. And so I know that you're going through these things and you're going through these processes and you've been praying for so long and it feels like you got to the peak, but then you realize it's a false peak, and I know you're tired and you're unwilling and you don't know what to do, but I'm here to tell you that if you just mirror Jesus' life, if you just pray consistently, if you just get into that word consistently, you will have the strength to carry on, and eventually you will reach the peak. But if your focus is so much on the peak that it's not on Jesus, it can crumble. There are a lot of rocks on the mountain that are not attached to it like it should be. And they can crumble out from under you. Let's bow our heads and close our eyes real quick.